We just finished videotaping the 3-day seminar that you are going to be viewing over the next few days. It is 20 hours of examples and techniques and methods that you can use to handle virtually anything that you are likely to run into in the sale of a manufactured home. Okay? If you truly learn everything that is on these videotapes and the workbook that goes with it, you would never again ever be in the sale where you don't know where you are, where you want to go, and more importantly, how to do it by the customer's value system. You're in the game with a game plan. Now, if you really want to get good at this, the way you do it is after every single presentation, sit down and review what you've done. Now, most salespeople won't do that. In order to honestly review what you've done, you've got to be willing to admit that maybe you did something that needs improvement. One of the ways that many salesmen survive rejection is they get extremely good at denial. They blame everybody and everything else for not being able to make the sale. However, if you can get your ego in a position where it'll stand it, and you're willing to admit that maybe you did something wrong, that's where you learn. Professionals learn off of their mistakes. You don't learn off of what you know. There's no learning to be done there. So after every presentation, I would heed you that what you do is sit down and ask yourself 3 questions. If I had a chance to do that presentation over again, how would I do it better? That'll teach you where to go into the workbook and the videotapes to improve your skill level. There's no sense going over something you have under control. The secret is to identify those things that could use some improvement. The second question is, what should I have sold the customer that I didn't? The customer might have got you off on a tangent. You forgot to point out the double sinks in the master bathroom that they told you they wanted as an example. Or any one of a million other things. Make notes and put it with their interview sheet so next time you see them, you're sure that you've covered all of the value your home has to offer to their value system. And the third question is, what prevented me from closing them today? What excuse or objection or getaway story did they use that I didn't know how to handle, and how am I going to handle that next time it happens? If you'll ask yourself these 3 questions after each presentation, then go back into the book to improve your skills, I promise you, you'll see a steady growth in your closing ratios and in your profit ratios. So I really want to thank you for investing in the tapes. I promise you, you'll find them instructive. And until I see you next time, good selling. All right, what we're going to cover today is a step-by-step procedure to put you into the game into the game with a game plan, so that you've got an organized, sequenced approach to making a sale. And we're going to cover every single step of that from the time you see the customer drive onto your location until you let them drive off, hopefully with a sizable deposit and a workable deal. Now, what for the benefit of the tape and the fact that some of you haven't seen the other ones, and the benefit of the new people that will be watching these tapes in the future, let me give you a little background as to where I'm coming from, and consequently where what I'm going to be suggesting to you is coming from. Because I'm going to ask some of the people that are here and some of the people watching the tape to totally change the way that they sell. If somebody's going to affect my income that way, then I'd like to know, okay, where did all of these ideas come from? Well, first of all, I started in this industry in 1953 in Allentown, Pennsylvania, as a very small child, okay? And with a single lot, I started working for my father-in-law. Okay, by 1959, we had built that up into 3 sales lots, 3 parks, and a parts and accessories house. I had bought into a partnership position in 1962. In 1969, my father-in-law decided to retire. He very wisely kept the parks, okay? We sold off the sales locations because I wanted to devote myself to building up the parts and accessories house, which I thought was an opportunity at that time. And I did just that. That was in 1962. In 1969, Midas International, who owned the largest parts house in the country, gave me the so-called proverbial offer you cannot refuse, a very large amount of cash, and I sold the company to them. I subsequently moved out to Elkhart, Indiana, and ran their parts department for a one-year term under a contract I had with them. At that time, I returned to the Allentown market area, which is about 60 miles north of Philadelphia, totally out of the Philadelphia market. No, none of that. It's a town of 105,000, and the surrounding area is about 450,000 people. But I returned to that market area and with two partners set up 5 sales locations in eastern Pennsylvania. In 1977, we again had an opportunity to sell out. I'm somewhat of an entrepreneurial spirit. I like to start something out, and once it starts making money, I have a tendency to lose interest in it. I'm surprised that I'm doing this as long as I am, to be honest with you. Probably the reason I am is that I don't have everybody doing it the way I'd like to have it done. So maybe that's what's keeping me interested in it and continually learning with it. But I sold out again at 77 and went into training on a full-time basis. Some of you might be aware that for about a 17 or 18-year period, I did all of Fleetwood's training all over the United States and Canada, did anywhere from 80 to 120 days a year for them up until about 4 years ago. Okay, during that same length of time, in 1982, I wanted to get back into the fray of things a little bit and try out some techniques that I had developed since the 70s. And I took a position as vice president of sales and marketing for a company called Mobile America in Houston, Texas. You know them today as Nationwide, but at that time they were called Mobile America. I came down here and worked 3 weeks a month with that company. 1 week a month I continued to do the training for Fleetwood at that time with the contract I had with them. All right, in 1983, off of 16 sales locations, we sold 3,960 homes, and we did it very profitably. In 1983, if you check the yellow pages in the Houston market area, there are 112 dealers listed. We had 11 of them. We controlled 37% market share. We sold a little better than 1 out of 3 homes that were sold in that market were sold on one of our 11 lots, and the rest of the people got the balance on it. And again, we did that very profitably. They were the only major player that survived the late 80s that I'm aware of, the multiple lot player that still was standing at the end of that time. Okay, in 1983, you sold 44,000 homes in the state of Texas. In 1987, you sold 4,000 homes in the state of Texas. You lost 90% of the business in 4 years because of the oil problems that you had down there, and they managed to survive that very handily. They changed their name to Nationwide, and unfortunately got away from the program. I left them in 1984, okay, to come back to doing this on a full-time basis. Over that same 40-some years, 1976, I was inducted into the Mobile Home Hall of Fame. I do lecturing all over the United States. I do this about 160 to 180 days a year somewhere. I was in Oklahoma on Monday, working with an account up there this past Monday. And I write for a number of magazines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I'm not telling you this to try and impress you with my pedigree. That's not the reason for this. I'll tell you what I am trying to impress you with was the exposure that I've had to this industry. I am not somebody like and I don't mean this demeaningly, I'm not a Zig Ziglar or somebody like that who gets in front of 40 different industries and talks at the same time. Every single thing that I'm going to tell you has been developed in this industry, for the industry, and by the industry, and it will work in your market area. It will work in your market area. I always love to hear, well, that may work up north, but it isn't going to work down here. I developed a good share of this in Houston, okay, and refined it. 2 of the guys that were actually 3 of the guys that were my manager. Who's your heaviest competition in this market area? In your market area, who would you say is your best competition? Palm Harbor? Well, Palm Harbor's retail managers used to be managers for me in 82, 83, and 84. Chuck and Chris and TK, managed and learned this program from me in 1982, 83, and 84. They were managing lots for me when I was vice president of the sales. If you call it, they used this program with almost a draconian attitude toward it. It is going to be done this way. Now, why do you want to have a program? Well, one of the reasons from a corporate angle is that if you want to survive as a corporation, you have to have a way to clone managers and salespeople, because if you don't, you run out of people to promote. Okay, so that any large company that has multiple locations wants something done the same way at every place. That way, if you're selling the same way in Texas, as an example, as you are, say, in Ohio, I can take somebody from Texas, move them up to Ohio, and when just getting them used to a few of the peculiarities of that area, like the park locations and things of that nature, they can start selling and become effective. The second reason you want to have a selling, from a managerial standpoint, if I don't have a system and you start going into a slump, the first thing I'm going to do is come back to you and say, okay, what are you doing differently? You were selling, you're not selling, now all of a sudden it's changed. What are you doing differently? Well, if you don't have a program, then there's no way to track that, is there? Where if I can say, okay, let's take it one step at a time, here's what you should have done in the interview, here's what you should have done in the demo, what did you change? We can start identifying what you changed and get you back on track and making some money. Another reason that you have a program, the biggest single reason that we lose salespeople in this industry is that we don't teach people how to make money fast enough to stay with us. Okay, managers have a tendency to hire and then sort of leave alone. How many of you work for small independents? Anybody? Okay, your training, Angela, I would suspect was being handed a price sheet, and here, go D forth and sell, and if you get in trouble, come back and I'll try and figure out what was wrong. Is that fair? No formal training at all on it, little bits and pieces and the rest of it. Okay, and that's pretty well what is done throughout the industry. There's very, very little training done inside of the industry. When I started developing this, I wanted to get away, number one, from having to hire the what I call the retread, and I can do that because I'm one of them. Okay, one of the things that I had a problem with is that you have a number of salespeople in this industry. I swear there's somebody upstairs with a horn that blows it about every 90 days, and about 20% of the salesmen in this industry get up and move over one dealer. And they keep going from dealer to dealer to dealer, and they never stay with you, and they never really produce, and turn into prima donnas on you and everything else. So very early in my exposure to this industry, my decision was that I wanted to be able to hire outside of the industry. I wanted to be able to bring new people in, people that had never seen a manufactured home. Well, when I started looking for people, I would say to somebody that was doing a good job in the industry they were at, why don't you come over into the mobile home industry, you can make a lot more money. The first question was, how long is it going to take me to become productive? And at that point, I would say, 6 to 9 months, you'll probably figure it out, you'll be okay. Well, they sort of looked at me like I was insane. Why should I leave an industry where I'm currently making a good living to go into a 6 to 9 month learning curve? So it occurred to me that what I had to do was come up with some kind of a program where I could teach somebody how to become effective quickly. And that's what I think that I've developed for you. See, if I can just get you to do the interview right, and then game plan with your manager, and you have got a right to expect your manager to help you on what you should be showing. So that if you break it down, you do the interview, get the information, go to the manager and say to the manager, okay, Mr. Manager, here's the information, what should I show this guy? Because when you first start knowing the inventory, knowing how to use the figures and that stuff is going to take you a little while. Let him and his expertise help you, or her. Okay? He should be showing you what you should show, so that way, at the back end, if you have to TO back to him to close, you bring him a makeable deal. You bring them something that can be put together. You don't come back in and say, here, I'm $450 out of budget, can you perform a miracle? Because they can't. So I believe that you make or break the sale in the interview. And as a brand new person or a person that's having problems getting production up, My experience is you show me somebody that's in trouble in the close, I'll show you somebody that did a week or no interview. And I have never, ever seen an exception to that. Not once. Not ever. So that was my thinking, that I would develop a program where I could get somebody predicted quick enough. I'll close the sale for them. If you come to me and say, here's the information, what should I do? I can tell you what to do. So you go out. When you bring it back to me, I can close it for you, give you the commission check, until you can figure out how to do all of that on your own. Okay? And if you figure out how to do that on your own, then you're up for promotion. Okay? And that's really the reason for using systems. So that's basically what we're going to cover. Now, this is not a canned presentation. It is a systematic approach to making the sale. Now, that's not a new concept. Planned presentations, actually, the first recorded planned presentation was developed by a company called National Cash Register back in 1895. They had a canned presentation at that time as well as planned for going out and selling cash registers. And they were somewhat successful with it. A few years after that, they changed their name to IBM. Okay, so they did a pretty good job at doing that. And that was the first time. However, there's been other programs that have been developed since then. They're very, very popular. As an example, how many of you have ever taken Dale Carnegie courses? Okay, did you take the sales course? Okay, 5 steps: attention, interest, desire, conviction, and close. Get their attention, create an interest, develop a desire, convince them your product will do it, and then close them. You know, and it's a sequenced approach to making a sale, that you do it in a certain order to increase the odds on it working. How many of you come from automotive industry? Anybody automotive? Okay, track system, 4-corner, system is taught in that. Okay, you go back to 1926 to the old Hall-Dobb system that was developed in Spokane, Washington for selling cars by a guy, I always thought his name was rather appropriate. His name was King Ringer. Okay, in fact, his son, who taught in the travel trailer business, was killed a few years back here in Texas going to conducting a seminar similar to this in the RV industry. Any of you ever taken Xerox Learning Systems program? Nobody? Okay, that's 3 days of how to ask questions. Okay, the whole 3-day program is how do you ask questions. Their concept is, and I heartily agree, is that questions are the answers. If you ask the right questions, listen to the answers, the guy will tell you everything you need to know to sell them. You know, it's a matter of, see, my contention has always been that selling is nothing more than problem solving. You can't solve a problem you've never identified, which is what you do when you go out with half or no interview. Okay, you first got to identify the problem. Okay, let me back up with that a little bit and give you a couple of ground rules as to what we're going to do here, too, which I should have started with. Number one, we'll take a break today about, I said at 10:30, and this afternoon with the break from 11 to, or 12 to 1 for lunch, which will be around the corner. And start promptly at 1. We will work till 3 o'clock, take a break then. And I really want to hold those breaks down to 15 minutes so that we can get as much in as possible since we're recording. And we'll break today at 5 o'clock, and I think tomorrow we'll start a little bit earlier. We'll see how it goes today as to how far. I'd like you to just jump in anytime at all that you've got a question. If you just raise your hand, I'll recognize you. And please, anytime at all that you've got a question, feel free to ask it. I get on a roll sometimes and I don't make sense, so if that happens, ask me to back up and clarify something. I am going to be the only one that's going to tell war stories, though, or will be here until next Thursday. So I do want to hold it down to that, but please, let's make this a work session today. Don't let me stand up here and hobble around just, lecturing, because I absolutely detest that. Again, for the sake of the tape, the reason I'm hobbling is 4.5 weeks ago I had a hip replacement. I'm still recovering from that, so that next time any of you see me, I should be back in running shape of one sort or another. A slow run, anyway. Okay, so with that, like I said, I really want to encourage you to ask questions. Don't be afraid to bend, mutilate, or staple me either. If you've got something that you really don't think will work, please, let's get that out on the table. If you give me an opportunity, I think I can justify and give you logical reasons for doing what I'm suggesting. So with that, there are, let's talk about a little bit about your competition and perhaps some of the people in the company too. I'm not sure. I don't know everybody. But you've got basically four kinds of salespeople that are in any kind of industry. Just to back up shortly again, the concept of a planned presentation, as I said, have been around forever. Dale Carnegie trains thousands of people how to use that five-step process every single week all over the United States. And probably one of the most popular programs ever written. So what your salespeople really break down into one of four categories. You've got what I call an unconscious, incompetent, then you've got a conscious, incompetent. You have got a conscious, competent. Okay, and then you've got an unconscious, competent. Okay, the unconscious incompetent, this is the guy that is always on the brink of failure, okay, just manages to hang in there. That is also the guy that never attends any of these programs. That's the guy that's staying back, that probably didn't make it today because he figured he was going to kill somebody at the lot. He didn't have to come up here and listen to me that I wasn't going to tell him a darn thing he didn't know. Okay, if you've got anybody like that, also those people do not like you to succeed. Because if you succeed, then they're going to have to, and they don't want to do that. So what they'll do is they'll lead at you, and they'll try and bring your sales down to justify their own incompetence. If you've got somebody like that at the lot, I would suggest to you that you treat them like they had AIDS and stay as far away from them as you possibly can, because they're going to totally ruin your attitude and everything else. Now, how many of you are just starting? Who's the 30 days into the industry? Okay. All right, Nikki, you're what I call a conscious incompetent, okay? And what I mean by that is you really don't know what you're doing yet. I mean, you're just starting to learn it and everything else on it. So in effect, you're an incompetent, but you're conscious of that fact. You know that you don't know what you're doing, okay? Now, whether you go up and go through the next two steps or you sink back is going to be dependent upon two things, yourself and your management. You know, does your manager, capable and willing to help you succeed, and are you willing to put in the effort to get there? Okay, if not, then you have a tendency to slide back into the unconscious, incompetent level and sort of vegetate there, and that's the guy that moves from location to location to location. Okay, now, if you put some effort into it, you become the conscious competent. That is somebody that knows what they're doing, is making a good living, but realizes that if they're not constantly reinforcing what they know, they forget it and get out of the habit and then start drifting down in. This is such a complex procedure and such a complex purchase that it's almost, if you're not constantly reviewing, here's 228 pages of notes on how to handle a customer just in this alone. You know, remembering all of that is a real bear. I mean, you really got to work at that to do that. Then, if you're lucky, you get up into this level, the unconscious incompetent. I've had the privilege of working with a few people like that, people that have 70 and 80% closing ratios. People, if you get in front of them, you own a home. You know, they are so good. It's just unconscious for them. They just go out and sell. They've spent just literally years learning their craft, and they are just the ultimate professional. It's an unconscious act with them. They just go out and do it. Somebody says something, they don't have to go, duh, how do I answer that? They just do, you know. And, so you usually start at this level, you know, whether you sink down or go up, like I said, is going to be up to you. Now, this is not an easy program to learn. What I'm going to suggest to you is not an easy program to learn. This requires a lot of work. And in order to get the full benefit of it, you're probably going to put a good year into learning it. Now, you'll see benefits off it right away. But if you want to get to the point where it's second nature to you and you don't have to think, you're probably going to have to work at it for a year. However, David, a good salesperson in your company would earn how much a year? Average? Yeah, decent. Pardon?
50, 60.
Okay, let's say 60 grand, okay? Who is a college grad here? Okay, what's your, you have a bachelor's or, okay, in what? Journalism? Okay, 4 years of college, thousands of dollars in 4 years of your life, okay, and you would start at how much? 20,000 if you're lucky, right? Okay, who else said they had, okay, what's your degree in? I'm sorry? Criminal justice? Okay, what would you start at? About 20? Okay, now here you've got, see, if you'd put the effort into learning this that you did to getting the degree, I'll make you 3 times as much money as you would with a degree. But you've got to treat this like it was that type of a challenge. You know, this is not just something you're going to page through the book, listen to the, them Russell, and learn it. You're going to put some effort into it. But if you view this and just say to yourself, I'm going to put the same kind of effort into learning this, how many books like this did you learn to get a degree? Okay? And study and test and everything else, a lot of them, right? So that you could earn a third of what this industry is capable, or more. Because 60,000 is certainly not, the upper limit. I can show you guys in Texas that are earning over 140, as a salesperson, not as a manager, as a salesperson. Now again, now we're talking the unconscious confident. But nonetheless, I can show you guys that are making that kind of income in your market area, because I've worked with them. And so that type of, that type of return is not, you don't get paid $60,000 just because you show up every day. You get paid $60,000 because you've got talents nobody else has. The more difficult the job, the better the pay. For easy, this is something they don't teach you at college. For easy, we don't pay much. For easy, we put the pictures on the cash register keys. There's the Big Mac, there's the French fries. See, that's for easy. Right? And if you think it's going to be easy, it's not. However, if you're willing to put the effort into it, what a great opportunity. See, and the beauty of being in the housing industry is that you're in the big three. Food, shelter, and clothing. I mean, people got to live somewhere. Unless they want to join the homeless, they have to live somewhere. And take a look at the opportunity you've got. See, I'm not necessarily concerned about the drop in traffic. What I'm concerned about, I get into this a little bit later, is a drop in closing ratios. Okay, or that they were never attained. But national statistics say that the average person moves once every 5 years. Now, that is a lot of people that move in apartments more often. And those are our, good share of those people are our customers, is the person that's in an apartment. That's the ideal guy, to sell to, because he doesn't sell a house first and everything else. But that means that at any given time, you've got 20% of the population moving. If you break that down into 12 months, you've got what, about roughly 1.5% of the population of an area moving every single month. I just can't believe that I can't find, some people to sell a home to with that many people moving. I just, statistically I find that impossible to believe that there's not, there's always people moving. The secret is how do you get to them? And then when you get to them, how do you close them? That you don't go looking for the laydown. Forget the lay down. Chuck and I sold all those guys years ago, and they're still upside down. Okay, so you got those. The guy that comes in and says, "I absolutely must have a house, and I insist you sell me one." Is if you're lucky, maybe once a year, if that. You're going to have to work at it. But if you're willing to do that, I know of no other industry where you can earn the kind of money that you can earn in this industry without a degree, without a financial involvement, and without any legal involvement unless you lie. I know of no other industry where you can walk in the first year, come out with $50,000, $60,000. I challenge you to give me one other industry that will allow you to do that. And certainly the automotive industry won't allow you to do that anymore. They've beaten that down that there's no money at all. What are you selling cars for in this area?